Hi, I'm Roseanne Manzik, and I'm from Texas State University, and it is my great honor to serve as NCA president this year. I'm so very pleased that all of you have joined us today for this conversation about our vision for NCA as we undertake our first comprehensive strategic planning process in over a decade. Now, I've chosen this as my presidential initiative, and I'm so excited about the possibilities as we together envision the kind of organization that we want to be, the values that will guide that journey, and the specific goals that we aspire to achieve. So before we begin our planning tasks, and trust me, we're going to get you interacting in a variety of ways today, I'd like the NCA officers to introduce themselves, and then we'll overview the agenda for today's session. So David, you want to get us started?
Hi, I'm David McMahon, and I'm the immediate past president of NCA.
I'm Walid Afifi. I'm the first vice president of NCA.
I'm Marnell Niles-Goins, second vice president of NCA.
Great. Thank you, you three. It's really a pleasure to work with this leadership team. I also want to take a moment to recognize that we are assisted today by some fantastic members of our national office staff. And also, in particular, let me introduce our new executive director who joined us in January. So Dr. Sherry Miles Cohen. Sherry, you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you for the first all-member meeting I've attended. I'm Sherry Miles Cohen. I joined in January, and as Roseanne said, there are a number of colleagues on this call with me here to support you today.
So great. And we're so appreciative of all the great work. So welcome to Sherry. Thanks again, and welcome to everyone here. As I said, as we begin our conversation today, we're going to engage your participation in several ways, including some breakout sessions, which we'll get to in a moment. But just a reminder, we've got mics open, but a reminder to mute yourself for right now as we get started. We also invite you to post questions that you have for the officers, either about the strategic planning process or other questions that you may have about NCA's activities and initiatives, and post those in the chat area. We'll have a question and answer period at the end of this session, but the questions that we don't have the opportunity to respond to will be addressed in a future member email. So it might take us a couple of days to respond and compile that. So have understanding around that, but we definitely want to hear from you, and we definitely want to be able to offer some answers to your questions. And there will be future all member conversations with the officers down the road as well. So now on to the strategic plan, which is our special focus for today. As you know from your experience with plans on your campuses and in your organizations, they have many layers, beginning with mission and vision, underscored by core values, and focused on specific goal areas and objectives. In our process so far within NCA, we've engaged the Legislative Assembly and our 6 governance councils in conversation about our strengths, challenges, and prospects. And then in February, the members of the NCA Executive Committee met to draft mission and vision statement concepts, discuss core values, and specify our goal areas. So today, we bring all those results to you and invite you into where we are in the process. So first, we're going to share the mission and vision statement. Now, importantly, think about this as this is what we aspire to do and how we do it. And they're meant to be very succinct. So they're, almost like bumper stickers. So here they are. The officers crafted these 2 statements from the ideas that the members of the executive committee generated. So if we can see that slide with the mission and vision on it. Okay, there we go. All right, so we had really 4 different visions and missions that different subgroups with the executive committee came up with. And then the 4 of us work together through a pretty intensive conversation to pull these together into these succinct statements. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you in some breakout rooms now. And as you consider these mission and vision statements, I invite you to reflect on a few questions as we send you for this kind of really brief conversation. What possibilities and opportunities do the statements make you think about? What do they bring to mind about NCA, especially as we think about these as future orienting statements? Okay, so we're going to send you to the rooms, have a brief conversation about your reactions and your thoughts, but please don't wordsmith, just think about the more general questions and your impressions and reactions to the statements. Share those. Facilitators, take some good notes, and then we'll come back for some rapid reports. Okay, see you in about 5 minutes. Well, as we get everyone back here, this mission and vision portion is just meant to be a really quick introduction, to get some impressions, to have you look at it, think about it. I loved how in our group, Marnell read it and she said, just let me read it with, close your eyes, think about it. How does it feel? And do you see yourself in it, which I thought were great questions. So really quickly, I'd like the facilitators to report back, just, maybe 30 seconds worth of what you heard and what the impressions were.
Roseanne, you want to call us out?
Anyone can start, so.
Okay, I'll start.
Okay.
So I had a great group with Mia and Kate and David were in my group, and we talked about the how communication can be just instrumental in helping to distill the plethora of information that we're bombarded with on just a regular basis, and how important communication is, and NCA in particular, for harnessing our energy to advocate or champion for the ethical practice of communication, to really help with distilling and helping us tease out misinformation and disinformation from all of what's sort of happening out there in the world.
Okay, great.
Right.
Thanks. Okay.
Hi, I'll go next. I'm Colleen McGough at Whatcom Community College in Bellingham, Washington. Our group from Breakout Group 1 in general said it was nice, but it didn't really inspire us. It seemed kind of bland, and it doesn't really say who we are as an association. And it kind of framed communication as a means to an end, rather than really addressing the passion and inspiration we have for being communication professionals. And maybe offer a bit more of how all of these parts connect with one another, not only within the organization, but to other organizations that we might touch or collaborate with. So that's a 30-second synopsis of our group's comments.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Waleed, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure, I'll go next. Yeah, it was a great conversation in our brief, but great conversation in our group. There was about 9 or 10 of us. I think that the gist of it was a lot resonated in terms of applied, a lot resonated in terms of there's a lot that they liked about it. There was a sense that there was a missing word or two in the vision. And we kind of played around, the idea being that what we do is enhance communication, and that transforming lives through communication, maybe there's a possibility of flipping that to center communication a little more. There was a suggestion to say enhance communication to transform lives or whatever. In other words, there was a sense that what separates us from other, let's say, psychology, and it's really about creating and centering communication. There's a concern that other disciplines are trying to do communication, but we're uniquely qualified to lead there. And so that the vision might want to emphasize that. But overall, other than that key point, there was a lot of resonance around both the vision and the mission, I think.
Okay, great. Thanks. Marnell, you want to go next?
Sure. We had a good conversation. We didn't critique the vision and mission. I think collectively in group 4, we liked it. We liked the spirit of both. Some of the possibilities that we thought about in terms specifically of the mission were what the discipline or the larger body can do, and how we can not just transform how we think about lives, but how we can transform lives as well. We thought that it left a lot of room for each of us in the room to see ourselves, to see our scholarship, to be activist scholars in the vision, especially. And so from rhetoric to organizational communication to small group communication, we were able to almost think about things that not only we're doing right now, but the possibility of what we could do within our scholarship.
Okay, great. David?
In that group, there was critique, especially seeing the vision as being impossible. At least that was one critique. Also a question about fostering a better world for who. And then centrality was seen as important, and especially K through 12, there not being a required course in communication. And then there was also discussion of incorporating community engagement and possibly social justice.
Okay. And see, is that all of the groups? Is that everybody? I guess so. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I know that's a very quick discussion. And of course, those are really, really valuable ideas. And in turn, included in the next steps is that the executive committee is going to meet again in June and take this feedback and whatever feedback you want to continue to give us additionally. And then we'll do the wordsmithing, right? And think about what we can do to enhance where we are with this starting point. So I really appreciate that energy and those ideas. I'm going to move you to the next segment here because, of course, as I said, the plans have layers. And so the strategic specific goals that we decide upon and the mission, right, and the vision that we're trying to capture are established all on a foundation of core values. And of course, these are the values by which, oops, wait, I lost my script. I've got to get out of my full screen. There we go. These are the goals. These are the core values are the values by which all of our strategic goals are measured. Right. So next, we want you to consider NCA's core values, both as in response to the mission and vision and also how they relate to our goals and objectives that we'll talk about. So in most planning processes, core values are honed to a handful so that their use as global measures are focused and it's an impact, it's a use that has impact as they are continually the touch points that the leadership and the membership use. So many of you, I hope, participated in this survey that we did along with the invitations to the meeting. And here's the results of the survey. We had over 200 responses. And as you can see, there were 3 values that garnered a strong consensus of over 90% of the respondents on a yes or no vote. And that was the idea, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, member and public engagement, and collaboration. And these were closely followed by fiscal responsibility and innovation at over 80%. So the survey also asked respondents to suggest additional values. So we know, we have a pretty good indication that the values that the executive committee originally came up with were the 7, and then that we asked you to rank and talk about. But we also offered an opportunity for you to suggest additional values. And this yielded some significant and interesting responses. So I'd like to, as we look at the second slide, we have the original 7 that you responded to, and then we have the ones that were suggested by members, and the bolded items were the most common ones. So as you consider, then you look at this list, the original 7, and these additional items, we wanted to talk just for a few minutes about your reactions to the core values, to the survey, to what you think should be central in NCA strategic planning. So the question, I guess, really is, what would you, as we're trying to get a tight core list, what would you advocate adding or subtracting? So again, take a quick look at the slide here, make a few notes. We'll put the 7 in the chat, and then take a look at these extra ones and what you think. Okay, and then I'm going to have you take the slide away. And we'll come back. And this is where you get to, please raise your hand, and I'll ask our wonderful staff to help me facilitate this for a few moments about your reactions to those core values. Do you think our list of 7 and the 5 really that were identified is a good place, or is something missing? Something you'd pick up off of that additional list? Mindy, go ahead. I see your hand. Hi.
So I think they're all great, obviously. And I think that at the end of the day, all of them need to be accomplished. For me, it seems that they need to be reorganized a little bit. In other words, there are several things that are important, and perhaps combining them under more inclusive categories might work. For example, so if you think about collaboration as a value, then you can do the inclusivity, diversity, equity, and action under that, in addition to doing that under a second category of innovation, in addition to a third category of ethics. So it seems to me that inclusion, diversity, equity, and access needs to be central, and so does the adherence, communication, discipline. All of those need to be central, but how to organize those seems to be maybe an interesting move to think about.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Okay. All right. I see Steve.
Just a quick observation. I think they're very good. Is there a way to incorporate the word communication in any of the values, such as collaborative communication or ethical communication, so that they're distinctive to NCA? That was my observation. As I look at those could be values, and there may be the similar values of others, but can they be values that reflect us in the use of the word communication in any of them? Maybe not, but for example, collaborative communication, as opposed to just collaboration. We're emphasizing that our value is the way we communicate and relate to each other. So just a thought.
Great, thank you. I like the idea of both thinking about, although, I think the way in the planning process, the way that the core values again are used is they become kind of our guiding principles, so that when we look at the specific goals and objectives that we want to, that we create, that are going to guide our future actions, these become kind of global values that we test against. So does this goal include collaboration? Does this goal include idea? Does this goal include ethics, right? So it may or may not be that we need to add communication because we're using them as kind of evaluative tools. But we welcome, additional thoughts about these. It's again, a important part of the process, right, that we'll go through. So we'll pick up a couple more comments, then I'm going to move you on to the goals. But I saw Michael next, and then we'll go to Rebecca, and we'll go to Mark. So, yeah, hi.
Hi, everyone. Just real quick. And I think this is in line with the conference theme of this year, but I think it's a commitment to place that falls under something that was sort of vaguely described as like societal commitment or obligation to society. And I think we should take it a step further and say we have an obligation to place in the environment and the relationship that we have with those. That might be something to consider.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah. Rebecca?
Yeah, I think one of the things that came up on the other list, some of the recommended, there was around honesty, truth, transparency. I think one of the things that strikes me with is just considering things like, media literacy or just literacy in general. And so wondering how we see that sort of fitting into some of these and, focusing communication around literacy and citizenship and those sorts of things. So that's just something that's kind of coming to mind looking at that other list and then looking at the So kind of those top 7 is where does that element of literacy fit in under those 7?
Okay, great. Good comment. Mark, and then we'll take Eric, and then we'll move on.
Hey, y'all, thank you. I wonder, I'm not sure if this is a question so much as a comment, but it seems like the role of scholarship is implicit maybe, and maybe ought to be more explicit, especially given Rebecca's comment. It seems like fact-based communicate or fact-based information, or, the role of sophisticated, information collection and information evaluation seems an important value for us.
Okay, thanks. Eric?
Okay, thank you. And I think all of those ideas are absorbing, and I like the value of our NCA. And I want to maybe think more, we could add more value. Maybe we could add respect in these core values, because I think respect is really important attitude when we do communication. So that's all of my ideas.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's a good comment. And then we have one more. Nikisia I hope I said that right.
Yes, you did. Thanks. I was also thinking about the idea of future scholars. And I think that's something that the organization ought to think about in terms of how do we support potential scholars. Someone mentioned K through 12 and kind of an absence of communication in the curriculum, and also thinking of undergraduate and graduate students who eventually feed into, NCA, et cetera. And I think that's kind of, strategically thinking about developing future scholars.
Yeah, and that definitely is important, and I think is an important way that we can capture that, I think, in some of the goals that get to be more specific, right, as well. So speaking of that, let me move us to our third person. So thank you for those ideas. And again, as you continue to contemplate that list, I want you to think about how you might narrow, focus, organize, right, and share those thoughts with me and with the group. So goals and objectives, a third layer. The core values, again, are measures that we use to evaluate, and they're sort of our touch points for our goals. And goals then are the encompassing sort of they're the overarching areas of focus for the organization. So the 4 goals that you see here also emerged from the executive committee's discussion of strategic planning in January. And so now what we're going to do is assign you to breakout rooms again, and each group will have one of these specific goals to discuss. And we're going to ask you to do 3 things: to think about statements of achievement. In other words, what are we trying to accomplish under the goal area? Think about what might be some indicators of success. So in 3 years, how will we know that we've accomplished the goal? And then consider whether there's anything missing, right? Is there a goal area, again, an overarching thing that we should be thinking about that you don't see here? So to give you some initial ideas about statements of goal achievement, here's some ideas that the executive committee generated for each goal. So you can take a look at this slide really quickly. So you see we've got the goal and then examples of what we're trying to accomplish. And then the next layer would be the indicators that would go at the third tier. Okay, so this gets you some ideas to get started, but we're also interested in what you think of the goals and having you dig a little bit more deeply into these. Okay, so we're going to send you off to your groups again. This time, take about 10 minutes, and facilitators, again, take some notes, and then we'll bring you back for some quick reporting out before we go to our question and answer period. So we look forward to hearing those perspectives. Okay, well, welcome back as folks start popping in here. Yeah, we had an ambitious plan for this hour, and so we want to be sure and make sure that we get to some questions and answers. So as folks come back in, what I think that I will ask the facilitators to do is to share your notes and hold on to those about the statements for the goal achievement and the indicators of success. But what I'd like to hear, maybe really quickly, and then we'll move to our questions and answers, is in the groups, was there a sense that these goals captured what we needed to capture, or was there a sense that there was something missing? And maybe a little bit you want to share beyond that. So again, we'll do just about 5 minutes or less here with our report out from our statements to make sure that we have time for a few questions. So let's start with cultivate and empower member communities.
We were, I think, so there was a lot of enthusiasm for the idea that different communities have different needs. We were, I think, caught up with at what level we were speaking, again, making it communication centric. You know, I know when I went through the process, the difference between the vision, the mission, the values, the goals, and the strategic like all those things. So there was a sense that this isn't really a goal, it's a method to achieve a goal, and how do we get appropriate assessment kind of depends on what. So there was, I think, some discomfort with not knowing where this fit in the bigger picture. And so we actually never got to the question of, is this capturing, you know, everything?
Okay, but that's a really good concern for us to think about as we refined these. So thanks. Promote communications value.
We had a good discussion. Like the first group, we did not get through the questions, but we did spend some time making sure that we had a similar understanding of what it meant. And we didn't. We came to a really great understanding, and Byron did a good job in adding some parts of it. From when I think about it as being external. But we as a group came to the understanding that when we say that, we mean internally and externally, in terms of pushing ourselves to share our work outside of the discipline, as well as encouraging others outside of the discipline to see the significance of communication. That took most of the time and the discussion. But one thing I do want to point out, I don't think there was any discomfort with the core value. But we did talk about how it's not going to just affect us individually or as a group or even as an organization, but the NCA also needs to look at it from a systems perspective in terms of what it looks like for rank and tenure, in terms of pushing universities, if we publish outside of the discipline, to acknowledge the significance of that scholarship. So we had some good ideas, and I will happily write this up for you.
That's great. Thank you. And those are fantastic insights. Embrace and enact idea.
Yeah, like Lead Marnell have a lot of good ideas here. Focus more on indicators of success and how we might get there. And again, we have a long list of items that I'll share. I'll type up and share. So it's really good.
Okay, great. And cultivate a thriving and responsive organization.
Well, we had both a couple of ideas and just requests for clarification on the goal. There was no objection to the goal. One of the things was to build in self-reflexivity, that to look at our policies, practices, divisions, what serves us best and what is no longer serving us. So do that on some kind of cyclical basis. Because as one person pointed out, NCA tries to be a big tent organization, and sometimes some things can get lost in the process. And then there was discussion about being responsive, but responsive to whom? Is it to the members? Is it to the world? Is it to our communities? Should we be taking a stand on social issues? Are we responsive within the organization or to those outside of the organization? And so, yes, responsive from the point of, being good communicators, but I think it brought up a lot of what ifs rather than, indicators for success.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, all of you. I mean, I wish I could have been in every one of those discussions. It sounds like they were really productive, and it's the kind of insights and feedback that we continue, invite you to continue to give us. And I'm really grateful and really inspired by these contributions. So before we move to the question and answers, let me overview the next steps really quickly for you in the planning process. The executive committee is going to take all of this input, and in June when we meet, and we'll meet again with our consultant, that's helping us craft the plan and refine all of these 3 areas. Then there's a full draft plan that will be reviewed again by the executive committee in August as we develop that. That full plan then will come back to you in September, and you can look probably for another one of these kinds of forums when that comes through. And then the final plan will be presented for adoption to the Legislative Assembly, hopefully in November. So that's the timeline that we're on. Okay, well, now we invite you to put your questions in the chat, your comments in the chat. And I'm going to turn to Wendy Fernando, our NCA's Director of Publications, for assistance, and also enlist the other officers to join me in responding to the questions. So we've got about 5 minutes. So Wendy, do you see some emerging?
Well, I hope that you'll start entering some more questions in, but right now I see only one direct question, which is, what are we planning to do to create spaces for NCA top leaders who are minorities?
Okay, I'll let anyone want to respond to that. I think one of the, I'll start, which is that we are really excited to be bringing on board as of January. This was approved last year, a new leadership and mentorship. Actually, I think the title is reversed, Mentorship and Leadership Development Council. And that is a group that's going to be a part of NCA's governance structure. So the chair of that council will sit on the executive committee. And that council comes out of the mentoring task force that was created a few years ago by past President Kent Ono. And then that was part of what was in the report, would be to prepare the council. So we're excited that that's going to be both mentorship and then also a leadership pipeline that group will work on developing. So I don't know if other officers have comments about that.
Okay, so I'll move on to a couple of other questions that have come in. This is interesting. This is about process, really. Do we know that each person who took the survey, each person here, is interpreting what these words, phrases mean in the same ways? And they were referring to the core values, the collaboration, fiscal responsibility, and sustainability, et cetera.
Yeah, I saw that question earlier when that was posted, and I think that's a really interesting question. Of course, as communication people, and I'm a rhetorical person myself, we know that there's going to be different kinds of interpretations that people make about language. And so trying to capture in a word something that expresses a value is difficult. I'm wondering if other folks have thoughts about that.
That question is the question that inspired me to ask the group what we meant when we started discussing core values. I think when we put together the strategic plan, ultimately we'll have like definitions throughout, just to make sure that we have a common understanding, as opposed to the understandings that we kind of make up in our heads. That would be my suggestion.
Well, and again, my impression, and I'm still, very much learning about how this works on a very large association level with strategic planning, but excited about it, right? Is that the core values are things that, we potentially could put on our letterhead, right? That they are there at the beginning of every meeting and board agenda and every legislative agenda that remind us and, say, this is what we're measuring what we do against. And the whatever we do should always have this in it, right? So trying to come to a sense of what those values would be and to express those in words, I think is the challenge. Yeah, Wendy, do we have time for a couple more maybe?
Yeah, this is a two-part question. Describe plans to include community college members more actively And then are there ways NCA can expand scholarship from traditional research and publishing to broader approaches that can include community college members?
Yeah, well, I'll respond very quickly and then we'll see if we have some other impressions as well. I think that that certainly is the kind of thing we had in mind that would be built out under the goal of engaging member communities, because we know that that's an area that we really need to develop and that we really need to put some resources toward. And I think that the mentorship and the Leadership Development Council could really look at that particular area as an area to build out as well. I don't know if there's responses to the scholarship question. Anybody wants to?
I'd echo what Roseanne said, and I also say there's a task force for the future of conventions that's working right now. And one of the things that I think is critical is that we think about the ways in which we can create convention access in ways that folks who may not have the funding can still be part of those conversations. And I think community college is one way in which I think that is really important. Community engagement is something that is really central, and community-centered work is really central to my commitments. And so I think thinking outside the box in terms of creating opportunities. And so we're having those conversations, and I hope to continue to have those conversations about how do we make community engagement, community-centered activities, pedagogy, service, research, be a greater part of the DNA of our discipline. And so both those questions speak really closely to my heart in terms of those commitments, and I know other officers as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I want to be very respectful for everyone's time. And I want to direct you again to if you have additional comments, additional questions that you would like to share with us. And as you have a chance to think through some of the things that we've talked about today, please send them. You can go to NCA Strategic Plan at natcom.org. And we really, really want to hear from you. So thank you very, very much for taking the time out to join us today. Share your ideas, and we look forward to that. Please take care and have a terrific rest of the day. And again, thank you so much.